I'm not giving anyone a pass. But there was a time there where men needed a lot of education on what consent actually was. Men have to understand that sometimes it's not the person grabbing you in the alleyway. Sometimes it's just a power dynamic that makes you feel unsafe, and then to the point where you're like, okay, to get out of this situation.
I have always been a person to give women the benefit of the doubt because, especially through when there's accusations of sexual assault,
Yeah.
because there are far more cases of it actually happening than false reporting.
Right.
And I know men are trifling. I knew men trifling even when I was in the most. This is 2003. I'm at the height of my toxic masculinity. I'm at the height. You don't get no worse
Right.
than me in 2003. I am toxic all the way around.
And then, of course, you imagine yourself with a bunch of money and fame.
Mhm.
Right.
Yes. So I remember reading the case. And so that's what, me, researcher, I'm like, I'm not going to just go on what the news is reporting. I'm going to read the case. And when I read the case, I was just like, oh, he didn't do it. Like, this is them trying to get at him. And I remember in 2003. And so for the last 20 plus years, I've been like, he didn't do that.
Yeah.
He definitely didn't do that. Well, I'm watching this documentary and I completely forgot that they did drop the case because the accuser said she didn't want to testify. Things that I forgot. She was only 19 years old and the media scrutiny was absolutely ridiculous. She's a small town girl.
Yeah.
And another thing that I completely forgot, Kobe all but admitted it. There was a civil case after the criminal case was dropped and he settled and then wrote her an apology basically saying, I'm sorry, I thought it was consensual, but now I see that you don't see that it was consensual. And I was like, oh, so you did this whole time.
Well, here's the thing. And this is, I'm not giving anyone a pass, anyone, but there was a time there where men needed a lot of education on what consent actually was. That you can't consent and you're drunk or you're high, or you can't consent. Coercion is not consent, or things like that. There were a lot of things, but y'all just think, oh, yeah, I'm just begging a little bit, and then she gives it. There are a lot of instances where I'm sure he thought he had gained consent, and that just was not the case. And I don't know the details of the case, but I think both can be true.
Yeah. And as I've taken myself back and look at it, I tend to believe her now way more than I did back then. Back then, I was like, oh, this is a money grab because he's Kobe Bryant. Because he was a superstar. This is before he was Black Mamba. This is when he was Mr. McDonald's.
Yeah.
He had taken that Michael Jordan route and he was like America's darling.
Yes.
And then this happened and I was like, oh, no, Kobe Bryant wouldn't do that. And now I'm like, wait a minute. I'm older now and I know how power works, especially men who are powerful.
Yes.
And how men who are powerful don't like rejection. And I say, oh, I needed to take a step back and be like, well, no, maybe Kobe did it. And I hate to think about this or even bring this up because the man passed away.
Yeah.
I believe the world died when Kobe died because that's when COVID happened, right? Like Kobe passed away, Gianna passes away, COVID happens. The world ends.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Kobe, but now in retrospect, I have to examine myself and say, I can't give this a blind pass that he didn't do it. Like I have to look at the facts and be like, odds are he did absolutely do this, right?
Yeah.
Like, is it as horrific as some people would imagine? Maybe not, but nevertheless, doesn't matter how people can imagine how horrific it is. It's still a violation of another person.
And I think he probably went through that same realization of my intent doesn't matter. What was the impact of my actions? And I
Especially when
think,
he had all daughters.
yeah,
Like that had like he became this girl dad, but like that had to have hit him examining himself.
yeah,
Because I mean, he was a kid at the time. I think he was like it's 2003. I think he's 2 years older than me, so he's 25. And you say, "Well, that's not a kid." No, no, you
yeah,
still a
it
kid.
very much is.
It's
Now,
just
looking back on that age, you're very much a child. But they were both um, young. They were both young, and you know, was the apology letter part of a legal thing, part of also him examining his own behavior. Um, I think it was a little bit of both, but yeah, I mean, especially men have to understand that sometimes it's not the person grabbing you in the alleyway, right?
mhm.
Sometimes it's just a power dynamic that makes you feel unsafe. And then to the point where you like, okay, to get out of this situation, I
Yes.
have to do some things.
I had 2 instances where a friend told me about her going through something,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
2 separate friends, both female. One friend said that very same thing. Like I was over this guy's house. He was kind of being aggressive, but not too aggressive. But my rationale was, I'm just going to go ahead and do this because if I turn him down, what can happen?
Right.
Like things can get worse. And I never thought about that because I'm a relatively big guy,
Yeah.
6'4". At one time, I was 280 pounds, like just muscled up. People thought I was on steroids.
Mhm.
And, women come over to my house and I'm never pushy, but then my presence in and of itself, I'm like, yo, did women just decide to just do it because they might have feared my reaction, even though people know
Mhm.
me? But no, I guess you don't know
Yeah.
anybody.
You don't. Especially when the statistic is that majority of sexual assaults happen with somebody that you know.
Right.
Join the conversation and follow the Unsolicited Perspectives podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your audio podcasts.